Hi, Greg. You have it all looking fabulously.
Hey, Joanne, this is where my wife does her Zoom meetings, so I'm sitting in her spot.
Oh, very good. Well, it looks great. I like the decorations and everything.
Yeah, it's in our kitchen, so that's the wall in our kitchen, and the stairwell behind me goes down into our basement.
Oh, nice.
I got all my paperwork out in front of me.
Fabulous. Hi, Emerson.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It appeared at other meetings that Katie was having a hard time hearing me.
Well, we could hear you, but then later in the meeting, something would happen with your voice. And then closer to the end, it would come back. But there was a period of time when we had trouble, but in the beginning, we didn't. Or at least I could hear you in the beginning.
I think that's called old age. You start off fresh and you dwindle, and then eventually come back. No, I think I had my sound card was going bad. That's what I get for buying a refurbished laptop.
Oh,
What's that? A refurbished laptop?
yep. It's a work.
Well, up to now it does, 4 years later.
Oh my.
Oh,
I
yeah.
never have luck with refurbished. Never
Oh,
works.
yeah. I think I paid $235 for this laptop.
Wow.
Well, I recently got one, and so I used my new one from my home this last time when we did our city council meeting. And I felt like it was making me all yellow and stuff. And I thought, why is that? It's a new laptop. I mean, I bought it from Micro Center, but maybe I need to mess around with some of the settings or something.
Yeah. Well, I got spoiled because when I was working, I would get a new laptop every year. They had to catch me going out the door. You gonna turn in that laptop before you go? I said, oh, I thought y'all was gonna let me keep this one.
I don't think I've ever heard the bells before when we were, I guess, have we never convened right at 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock. Yeah.
Maybe I had my, or maybe Katie had her speaker off or something.
Yeah.
I usually try not to make racket in the background because I'm very good at it. I'm always, my chair squeaking or something squeaking.
I hear you.
Evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Neil?
I'm fine. I want to know what I'm going to do with my life once this election drama is over.
That's what CNN was talking about today too. What are they going to do?
For the very first time in my life, I paid attention to the Electoral College yesterday. I mean, who thought?
That's what, my wife and I
2024
was
race begin tomorrow?
Say it again, David. I'm sorry.
Doesn't the 2024 race begin tomorrow?
Yes, it does, apparently.
I think Josh Hawley began a couple weeks ago. So
I was going to say maybe a year ago. Yeah.
yeah.
It used to be that you talked about something called the invisible primary, where candidates were running and they were just quietly raising money. There's nothing invisible about this starting this early anymore.
Nothing.
I wish it were invisible for a while. We could all use the break.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Is that ever true? Is that ever true?
You think we'll see any money ever pour into the second district again?
You
My
know,
guess is they redraw it so that she's safer. And that
Yeah.
means between that and this last election, I think it means chances aren't good for a while.
I guess
all
I-
we need is Karen, so we'll wait a few minutes for Karen to join us.
I have lots of opinions on all those things, which I probably shouldn't share on this in this meeting. But when we can all get together again over at Emerson's house for that Hennessy, I'll reveal all the
Well, this would have been the traditional at my house tonight.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I'm sorry about that,
Yeah. So I just
but I
as an
didn't have to
aside,
clean. So,
I've had a couple of fire protection district meetings today, and I will share with you while we're waiting for Karen, the information that we've been given regarding the vaccine. And they are, of course, promoting first and foremost frontline people, which of course is as it should be. But everybody is going to be reporting to a Mercy has it. So everyone that's going to get the vaccine will have to go to Mercy to get the vaccine. And once you have been identified as a frontline person, so it's going to be EMS, fire, police, they will then contact you and they will say, we have this available to you. And if you say, no, I don't want it, then they just go to the next person in line and they move from there. It won't get distributed out to, again, typically fire protection districts would do it because they have paramedics, they have EMTs, they have a medical officer that would do all of these things. And they do that for flu shots. But it looks like it'll all get controlled through the hospitals, at least for the first quarter. So probably for everybody else, it'll be sometime first quarter or beginning of second quarter that will be available to everybody else. So there you go. But when they tell me there's a line, I'm going to be the first guy in it.
I'm with you, Neil.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go find my phone and try Karen unless somebody has their phone handier than mine.
Jennifer's texting her right now.
Oh, okay.
Neil,
Text
so
has been sent.
Neil, so does that mean I had heard that firefighters were pretty far down the list?
Now they're anticipating that they'll begin their vaccines either the end of this week or early next
Okay.
week. And it's being done regionally. Again, one of the things that this pandemic has done is it's made people think about things in a regional situation because no one knew who was going to get whacked by the virus. And there have been entire districts that have had entire shifts that have had to go off. And so there's been a lot of mutual aid that's gone back and forth. And that's been a good thing. And so one of the things that's happening is they're taking that same command that Captain Perks can tell us about as well. And they're using it to sort of figure out how they're doing the vaccine itself. So I kind of thought it would be important for the lawyer for these various places to have a vaccine as well, but they didn't seem to think that I was quite necessary. So,
Mayor, Karen will be on in just a few minutes. She's just
That-
wrapping up. She's wrapping up.
That sounds like the Trump White House staff.
yeah.
When they just put on a uniform and a fireman's cap or something and just stand in line.
That's what I said. You need me to ride on an ambulance? I can ride on an ambulance.
I got some spare you can borrow, Neil.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
Greg.
Yeah, those are the interesting things. But as I hear more, I'll let you all know. But again, it's moving and it's doing it in an organized fashion, which is a good thing. So
Good. Okay, a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead. Well, I guess, looks like our next council meeting is next year in a much better year of 2021. Katie, what is that first January Tuesday? I guess I should look on my calendar.
I believe it's the 5th.
The 5th.
Yes.
And you'll have all kinds of exciting things to come before you then. including a fun presentation by the auditors. It'll be so, well, you might want to go to sleep, but hopefully we'll make it short so it won't be too boring.
What is Marie's official start date?
The 11th.
Okay.
What is Marie's first name?
Marie.
What is that?
Ina.
Ina?
I think it's Ina.
Okay.
I'm
I thought that
wondering,
was a trick question.
Hmm?
Excuse me. I thought that was a trick question. Thank you.
Oh, no, I noticed it from the beginning and I said, okay, she's using Marie, but nowhere in conversation, my real name is Ina.
well, she probably.
Ina's an old-fashioned name. That's a very old-fashioned name.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe we should go ahead and get started. It is almost 10 after, and when Karen comes on, she comes on. So let's begin. Let's open this meeting, and we'll start with a review of the regular agenda. And I'm sure you have a lot of questions about that one item. Nothing? Then let's go ahead to our mayor city council updates, and we'll just go around and see what people have to add to our information bank here. And let's start with, I don't know, Laura, you're unmuted. We'll start with you.
Sure. Two quick things. One is the Alliance for Interracial Dignity is welcoming these students from WashU who have been working on community land trust background research for us and ways for us to communicate about it with the public. And so that's Thursday at 7 o'clock. I've seen the presentations. They're really good. So if you have a few moments, please join that meeting. The Business Development Commission met last week. There's some really great holiday promotions going on out of the Explore Webster Groves Facebook page. And one of those is nominate an essential worker who can then win a shopping gift card in Webster businesses. So please share that with friends, family, so people know about that. We've got ads on KEZK, KMOV in the Webster Kirkwood Times. This year, we even have a hashtag, which is WG Holiday. Joanne, did I get that right? Woohoo! I'm not very good with the hashtags. So, all right, that's me.
All right, next. David, you had your hand up. Do you want to add?
Well, I was just applauding the hashtag. I have nothing to add, Mayor.
Okay. Emerson?
Just one small item that the Webster Rock Hill Ministries welcomed their new interim executive director, Derek Bastian. And also the ministry had a successful distribution of gift cards and food to the community on last Saturday. We also was able to give away toys. We had people coming in shopping for toys, picking out toys, and there's still toys available that we're going to open up to the community up through Friday. So I want to thank the Webster Rock Hill community and the Rock Hill firemen. They participated in our toy drive and brought over a truckload of toys. So that was very eventful for us.
Thank you. And thank you, Emerson and Laura. I know you've worked really hard with the ministries in both the Thanksgiving and the Christmas family programs. And thank you, both of you. Pam? Anything?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Plan Commission met on Monday, the 7th. And again, they are just getting acquainted and going over the two zoning code text amendments. The first one is about changing the amendments to allow two-family dwellings in things that are formerly single-family dwellings. And they are allowed right now, but this will broaden the locations of where that can occur. And then there's a couple items of note that there are some that will be qualifying in the historic districts of Marshall Avenue, and then Central Webster, south of the old Webster Business District. and the topic of accessory dwelling units came up, and staff is recommending that we not address that at this time and hold that for later. The other zoning code text amendment has to do with dimensional requirements for residences in all of the districts. And this was very interesting. Danny Gendusa pulled together a lot of great visualizations of some of the data of the homes that had been newly constructed or additions. So I just thought I'd go over some of these things that are interesting. In the last 10 years, we have 170 new homes. 115 of those were demolished on demolished sites. Most new homes are maxing out at the allowable square footage. Danny showed us a bar chart of all the homes, and he had the existing square footage and then showed the new square footage. And of those homes, 70% of the homes that were built in the past 10 years have doubled or more in size. And then we had 171 additions in the last 3 years. So they're going to continue that. They held the hearing open, and they're going to start getting in more specifically about some of these regulations that they want to put into the code. That's all I have.
A lot. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sarah?
I didn't have any updates from meetings, but I did have a couple of questions or I guess issues I kind of wanted to raise. One, I was hoping that we could maybe on a future work session agenda address the Alliance for Interracial Dignity concerns about the Police Community Engagement Board and kind of talk through those as a council. I think that's important with the renewal coming up eventually. And second, I wondered, now that we have our equity audit scheduled, I wonder if we could talk about why that's a closed session. Maybe if there's a way to split it into parts so that some of that could be an open, a public session. I don't know enough about kind of what that involves, but I was curious about the decision to make it closed.
Neil would be able to comment on that. I think he stepped away, but he should be able to comment on that.
Okay.
And I can too, but since Neil's here, yes, I'll let Neil.
Go ahead, Joanne, and I'll follow up.
So what our attempt is to do with the equity audit is just to get the opinions, thoughts, feelings of the group and keep that within the group so that they can further explore. I think sometimes when you feel like somebody is listening or watching what you're trying to come to or the conclusions you're trying to reach, it's more difficult sometimes to actually be completely thorough and open to what your actual feelings are. And so that is actually the belief of the commission, or I'm sorry, the beloved community, that it needs to be just the group. And then after all of this is done, then is the opportunity for us to communicate and share the conclusions with everyone.
And because part of that involves, of course, disclosure of sometimes very personal things, it also would allow you under 610-021 to close it and discuss those personal things in a closed session. So again, it was more to facilitate what the beloved community wanted us to do, but there is a component part. You want people to be open and candid, not that you wouldn't be in an open meeting, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to disclose all your feelings in a situation where there's a whole lot of strangers watching that you don't know. So it as a component part, it's a training element, but there is that personal part of it that would allow it to be closed. Now, it doesn't have to be. It's just to facilitate, it could be done and open as well, but it's more to facilitate what the vendor wanted to do.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Karen is coming on. I think I've got, Joanne, do you have anything you want to add?
The only thing I want to add is that, so we received that first half from St. Louis County of the CARES Act money. We have not yet received the second half, but of course, all the information was submitted on time. But I'm finding out now that in a number of cities, they're having a third party, an auditing firm, double check the numbers. And so they're asking for a number of interesting pieces of information. For example, cities' overtime policies and things like that. I've already submitted that, so there shouldn't be anything on that they're waiting for from us. I attempted to comply with anything I thought they should be asking for or they would be asking for. Nothing has come to me yet, but I just wanted to let you know, they did say that they're hoping to have funds distributed to everyone by the end of December.
Thank you. Neil, do you have anything you want to add?
No, ma'am, other than, of course, as you all know, everything's been done in regard to the 2 Earth bunnies that we have, and they're all in place. I will tell you that the people at Webster and Bill Keeling and the folk that had it were really delightful. They were really fun people to work with. So it was a very pleasant experience, and it looks great. So.
All right, I have a couple of things. First of all, I really want to congratulate Joanne. Joanne has been named or elected the president of the Board of Loggers. This is an incredible honor. That's an $8 billion pension fund that takes care of 60,000 people. And, you know, I am just blown away because our Joanne is now the chairman of the board of that huge, it's the biggest employees pension fund in Missouri. So we owe her a big congratulations for that. Wow. Wow.
Thank you very much.
A couple of things. Neil mentioned the sculptures, and I hope you've had a chance to go by. The one that is at Webster University, and they have been delightful to work with on this. They have been so cooperative in working with, not only with Neil, but in working with our Parks and Rec and our Public Works folks. I urge you to go look at the back of the one that's at on the Webster campus. The placement of it was determined by the artist. This is how she wanted it to sit. So that's why it is the way it is, but it's the back of it to me that's so meaningful. And the rabbit was is going in any day now because the pad should be cured, and then we'll put a big red ribbon on that rabbit. You know, a few people have mentioned the board and commission party this year and how much they've missed it. We did send a thank you to every board and commission member, and I believe you got one this week also. We wanted to do something to acknowledge their work this year. And then finally, I wanted to mention that those of you on the Historic Preservation Commission, whoever is the liaison, we have a volunteer person who is doing some photos and audios and going to work with the Historic Preservation Commission on those Webster walks. And it's just, what he's doing is just pretty incredible. So those are the updates, and we can go on to our topics. And our first topic tonight is the use tax discussion. And Joanne, I believe you said there was a brief presentation.
Yes, I'd like to give a brief presentation, and then if during the presentation, Jerry, you or Neil feel like you need to insert something, if I've missed something, please do insert it, because I don't want to miss adding information that's valuable to everyone. But I'll go ahead and get started with sharing my screen. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got it lined out as follows. So I want to talk about what is a use tax, then why Webster Groves needs one. I'll also talk about what will the use tax be used for, and then I'll compare it to the sales tax. And then how does use tax apply to out-of-state vendors? And I'm also going to give a list of a few municipalities who currently have the use tax. So first off, a use tax is a sales tax, but it's imposed on the purchase of goods by Missouri residents and businesses from the out-of-state vendors. As you know, in Webster Groves, that currently does not occur. Webster Groves needs a use tax because it creates fair competition for our local brick and mortar stores. It also provides the city an equitable amount of sales tax revenue for comparable items purchased out of state. And then finally, it allows the city to once again receive revenues that have been severely diminished due to online out-of-state purchases. And you'll probably remember seeing this in the transmittal letter from the city manager and the budget message about how we've been impacted by this, but it's been severe for many years where we just don't get the sales taxes that we used to on purchases because so many people are purchasing things online instead of purchasing them in person from our various stores. So just a quick slide. Unless the city council wishes otherwise, this tax revenue would be used for general fund operations since that's our main operating fund in the city. Here is a comparison just to give you an idea of what that means. So if you shop at a store here in Webster Groves, let's say one of my favorites, which is Kind Soap, the sales tax rate would be 9.238%. That would be the state of Missouri tax, the St. Louis County taxes, and others. And I put a note down below. Others would be MetroLink, the Arch Initiative, and the Zoo sales tax levies. And then, of course, the city of Webster Groves, which is 1.5%. However, with the use tax, it would be less because the state of Missouri has a use tax. St. Louis County and others do not, and we currently do not. But if we did, the use tax rate would then be 5.725. So you can see it still is less currently for individuals who purchase out of state. So the use tax, this is how it is actually done. So the amount of the use tax due on a transaction depends on what I just showed you, the local tax, if there is an amount, and then the state use tax. But it's where the personal property is delivered. It's not where you actually purchase it, which is where sales tax is the difference between the two in this particular situation. The use tax applies to purchases made from out-of-state vendors in this situation, but it's not a universal situation. So that's where Wayfair legislation really also needs to participate as well. Missouri Department of Revenue requires out-of-state vendors to have something called a nexus in Missouri. And I'll explain what that means. Actually, I have this slide, and this slide I prepared, I put a lot of detail, so this could be shared with others. And so I don't mean to be reading the slides, but I know I am because I have so much detail here that I think is easy to read and follow. So a nexus would be if you have an office located in Missouri, or if you have an employee who is working in that office more than 2 days a year, or if you own real or personal property, or if you deliver goods to Missouri via vehicles owned by the taxpayer. So that's all good and well if you have a nexus in Missouri, but if there is no nexus in Missouri, then oftentimes out-of-state vendors don't or would not pay or collect the use tax from the purchaser. So in this case, the purchaser is expected to remit the use tax. However, it's voluntary because there's no reporting mechanism. I mean, you can say what, and they say it's over $2,000. Well, who's going to track that? There's absolutely no tracking mechanism in order for that to take place. So we would hope that more or less, I mean, there's always going to be a situation where with the use tax, we're not going to get as much as we'd hope to get because of these little provisions, but perhaps somebody will volunteer. So here are some cities in our region who have a use tax: Clayton, De Pere, Frontenac, Hazelwood, Kirkwood, Maplewood, Richmond Heights, and U City. I know that all of them have a 1.5% use tax like we would have, with the exception of Hazelwood. So Hazelwood must have, because theirs is 2%, they must have another local tax that the other municipalities don't have. Maybe there's an economic development tax or something, because theirs is 2% as opposed to the 1.5.
Joanne, can I ask, are any of those individuals, are any of those individual municipalities, is the use tax directed at a certain program, something like that? Where does the money go? Just into the general revenue fund?
That's a great question. Some have it that is not general revenue. So for example, Clayton has it for capital improvement sales tax, or that fund, the capital fund. I didn't research others, so I don't know that, but I just had talked to Janet Watson from Clayton to get some more details specifically about theirs. And I don't have it in this presentation, but I know I sent it when I put in the memo that I thought it was $200,000 or $250,000 that we should collect, but that's just a best guess. Because when I looked at the information from the Department of Revenue, that number is way off from what the various municipalities are actually collecting. Clayton is receiving probably 8 times what the Department of Revenue had estimated. Others are receiving about 5 times. So I averaged out from the information that I got from the various sources, and that's where I got my number. Because I didn't want to go high like Clayton, but I didn't want to be as low as what the Department of Revenue had given me, because I knew that number was not accurate.
Joanne, just so
Joanne, you said that number was what? I'm sorry, David.
Go ahead, Karen, sorry.
Joanne, you said that number was what?
I think I have either $200,000 or $250,000. Give me 1 second and I'll pull it to be sure.
And that represents revenue per?
That would be the money from the use tax that we would collect. So it'd be the 1.5% that we would collect on out-of-state purchases.
Over what period of time?
$50,000.
Estimated over what period of time?
1 year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just going to point out, like, beyond these regional cities, if I recall correctly, I did some research this past weekend, and over 160 cities throughout the throughout the state of Webster Groves have already passed a use tax, local use tax. So it's not like we're going into uncharted waters here. Like, multiple cities have done it throughout Missouri.
There are probably a bunch more. I just selected some on the list.
Yes, there are.
I just was just pointing out the fact that, like, this isn't, we're not the abnormal one here. In fact, if anything, we might be the abnormal one that we don't have one quite yet.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right. So Joanne, if we look back at that slide where you showed the our current tax, and then you showed the use, that one. So can you help me understand? So when we look at that, what exactly is it that a consumer who purchases something online from a person that's not a nexus and they don't have brick and mortar here, which tax would that individual actually pay?
So probably it would be the tax in that location that is charged in that location, because they wouldn't pay a use tax because we don't have the Wayfair or anything like that.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. I mean, so because I'm with David, I just totally think that it's just something that we have to do. So my question is, if we have a use tax in place,
yes,
which of these would I pay if I go online and buy something from out-of-state vendor?
So if you go online and buy something from an out-of-state vendor who has a nexus in Missouri, then you would pay 5.725% in use tax, with 4.225% going to the state of Missouri and 1.5% coming to the city of Webster Groves.
And the lift here is that right now we don't get any of that. Just
That's
period.
absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any expectation that the county is going to do a use tax as well?
I have heard nothing regarding St. Louis County taking that step forward, and I'm not certain why.
And I don't know legislatively whether these other districts like Metrolink or the zoo sales tax, if they would have the capacity to do that. That's a really interesting legislative question. We just don't know whether this is something that only a city can do. I don't know. It's worth researching.
Can somebody walk me through how this is collected and how it gets from the business that collects it at point of sale to us? I mean, I assume it goes to the state first. What does that look like?
So it would go just typically like other sales taxes where the Department of Revenue collects and then distributes to us.
So when I go on Amazon, which I do quite often, and some of the places have a tax and some of them don't. So when I complete that sale on Amazon, then Amazon, since that's the vehicle through which I'm purchasing, then is required to deposit that tax that was collected with the appropriate revenue department in the state in which I live.
So because Amazon is located in Missouri,
Oh,
and it depends on which location I mean, if you are purchasing it from one of Amazon's locations in Missouri, you may not be. But if you are purchasing, for example, the distribution facility in Hazelwood, then they would be charging the rate that Hazelwood charges.
okay. Okay. All right. So Wayfair, somebody that's not located in Missouri, purchasing online. I just purchased some wood for some wood chips from a place in Minnesota so I could smoke a turkey. These people were located in Minnesota.
So if there is no facility in Missouri, so there's no nexus at all in Missouri, then Missouri gets no money. We don't get any use tax at all. Then the money goes to the location where you purchase it. Does that make sense?
No.
No.
So I mean, because my question is, because I'm sorry, I'm probably just misunderstanding this. So we're trying to capture some of the revenue we're losing from people purchasing online as opposed to going to brick and mortar stores.
Right.
And so if I purchase online and I purchase from a vendor that's outside of Missouri, and they're going to be delivering the items that I purchased to my residence in Missouri, that still doesn't get us the 5.725 because it's being purchased from and delivered to a place in Missouri. It's that revenue goes to wherever the vendor's located.
See, that's the problem with our whole sales tax situation. If we had Wayfair and we had things set up like other states have set up with their sales taxes, we wouldn't have this problem. But Missouri and another state don't have any of this set up, so it's quite a mess. But if there's nothing called a nexus or nothing like that, there is no way that the Department of Revenue can be the recipient of this money. They don't know.
But so is that the purpose of Wayfair, of what we're trying to get the state to do, so that we will have then a vehicle that's what we're trying to do, is set this up so that now we have a vehicle established to be able to distribute these revenues through the state to the municipalities.
That would help. I mean, we have to do our first step, which is this, in order to get at least some of the use tax. Jerry, do you want to insert something?
No, I don't, but I have more. Now it's making me think of a couple of questions that I can't answer either, but.
Okay.
I mean, are my questions like out left field or?
No, they're not, Karen, but I think that what we really need to understand is whether or not the passage of this use tax in Missouri gets rid of this whole nexus business, so that we don't have to have the nexus business like the other states. And that's what I don't quite get yet, Joanne.
Okay.
Well,
do you?
I mean, I think the easiest thing to do is like when you go online right now and purchase something, sometimes you're not paying sales tax whatsoever.
Right.
And so what this use tax does, and there's no doubt that I mean, Joanne, I think is exactly right, that there's a confusion as to how we collect this. If it's just like your mom and pop stop on Etsy, and how do you collect a use tax, or how do you collect sales tax, is always the question. I think that creates problems with internet sales. But what this permits us to do is if someone is selling to local residents, it allows us to impose what would have been a sales tax as a use tax, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we run into issues, but the easiest ones, right? Like, and where the big money is coming from. And I think what, at least my intention is the Amazons of the world. It's to collect from that. Like, I mean, it's going to be hard to get from the Etsy's or from your Facebook vendors, but from your Amazon, Walmarts, or whatever it is, it's a lot easier.
And ultimately, it helps our small businesses. It puts them on more of an equal playing field.
That's exactly right, Mayor, because our small businesses are imposing the sales tax on people who come into the shop or order online here in Webster Groves. But suddenly they're at a disadvantage as soon as a Webster Groves resident can go online and purchase something else.
Yeah.
I don't want to not value the fact that acting on this is a signal to the state legislature that we have to make sure we fix Wayfair so that this becomes less complicated for all of us.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions or anything else, Joanne, that you wanted to cover?
I think that's all. I would like to know if there's general agreement, and if there is, I will bring an ordinance to the next meeting for first and second reading.
All right. Council members, are you in general agreement that we need to bring this forward? Or maybe I should ask, I hear a positive from David and a positive from Karen. How about the rest of you? Positive, bring it forward?
Can I just add something? I think this is a really good idea, obviously, but the only thing that I would add is maybe a discussion could be had regarding where this use tax money goes. Instead of it going into the general revenue fund, potentially we have an alternative fund or an alternative means of where this money goes. And I think that the reason I bring that up is only for the fact that I do think we are in the middle of COVID. Times are tough. And if we are demonstrating to the community that this new tax, so to speak, even though it's not a new tax, but nevertheless, what perceived as a new tax is going towards something that is beneficial for the entire community, I think it would gain a little bit more traction or support as we go forward into April.
I think you're right, David. I think if we specifically state what we want to use at least a portion of this money for, I agree.
And keep in mind, if we're going to, which we have to do at some point, we have to do this before January the 19th.
Yes.
But we wouldn't necessarily, I mean, does the ordinance itself have to stipulate at that point in time where the money goes?
No.
Because I don't want to rush that discussion. I think I agree
No.
100% with David. I'd like to have that discussion, but I don't think a timeline of mid-January helps us on that.
No, and it doesn't have to be in the ordinance. It just has to establish the tax, and then we have to, of course, make that decision. So.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
If the school board election doesn't end up being contested, will we still have this on the ballot in April?
We'll need to, won't we?
We still will have to pay because if I understand correctly from Katie, actually, Katie, would you just explain to us how this goes?
Sure. This election in April will cost us, and it just depends on how many other cities and municipalities have election items on the ballot. So it's split among everybody. So there will be a cost, definitely. And I'm saying probably between $12,000 and $15,000 as an estimate.
Anything else? All right. Are there any council members opposed to putting this into an ordinance? If not, then go ahead, Neil and Joanne, and we'll have some sort of ordinance for our next council meeting. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Thanks. All right, our next agenda item is the golf cart presentation. And I believe that's something that Greg is going to do, Joanne? Yes?
Yes, I'd like Captain Parks to speak with us a few minutes about the police department's position on golf carts, and then open it up for questions from the city council.
All right.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Mayor. So the Chief Curtis has asked me to step in tonight and discuss a little bit about our golf carts and the concerns we have for them within the city limits. So a little presentation. I don't have a PowerPoint slide presentation or anything, but I just have some memos here. So basically, a golf cart is designed or considered as a low-speed vehicle. There's several designations for that. And is everybody aware of our current ordinance that we have that designates what a golf cart is currently in the city of Webster Groves? You guys all aware of that? Nods? Nope. I'll read it. Currently, the city of Webster Groves categorizes a golf cart as a motorized play vehicle. So that includes mini motorcycles, pocket bikes, and any other vehicle that is capable of transporting a person or persons at a speed in excess of 5 miles per hour, that is self-propelled by a motor or engine and is not otherwise defined by Missouri statutes or the Webster Groves Code as a vehicle, motorcycle, motor tricycle, bicycle, or motorized bicycle. So a golf cart is technically not defined by the ordinance. It is just described as a vehicle as such. Now, the state of Missouri describes it under Missouri State Statute 304.034 as a golf cart means a motor vehicle that is designed and manufactured for operation on a golf course for sporting or recreational purposes, and that is not capable of exceeding speeds of 20 miles per hour. So that being said, we've had interest from some citizens that want to legalize golf carts for use in the city of Webster Groves. So we have several concerns from them. First being that the golf cart or the low-speed vehicle, they're involved in a number of incidents. And Joanne, do you know, did everybody get the memo that Chief Curtis sent you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was distributed some time ago.
Okay, so everybody has that. Yeah, December 7th, he has here, so from this one. So some of our concerns are the tip. I'm just going to cover them in brief because we don't have time to go over them in definition of each paragraph here, but tip exposures, they have a very high center of gravity, small tires, and they're prone to tip over. No restraints. Typically, these golf carts do not have any type of restraints, and what we mean by that is basically safety belts. They're open sides. Most of them do not have doors on them or any way of keeping the occupants of the golf cart inside. Some of them are produced with rear facing seats. I know you've all seen those at community days and whatnots where the passengers actually can sit on the back of them facing backwards as the vehicle goes forward. And frankly, the other concerns we have are the regulations put out by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration with not having appropriate headlamps, brake lamps, turn signals, reflex reflectors, red on both sides and rear, mirrors, effective windshields. A lot of them don't even have windshields, and they don't have the appropriate glass that meets all of the regulations required there. They technically don't have a VIN or certification label on them. They're a recreational vehicle. And that's a lot of the safety concerns on them. Now they do have some benefits. So part of the benefits are that they are very convenient, or cheaper to run. They don't create any more safety risks than motorcycles or bicycles. I'm trying to find all my notes here. The chief left me with this. All right, and they are low cost, they're energy efficient, and they do increase mobility. So basically, the police department's concerns about their risk factors slightly outweigh their benefits, and we would recommend against them. However, if the council decides to go forward with this, with discussions, we would recommend that you implement all of the National Highway Traffic Safety recommendations as far as headlamps, brake lamps, reflectors, mirrors, parking brakes, windshields, safety belts, et cetera, speedometers, and also a vehicle manufacturing identification number on it. And then we would also recommend that the operators be no less than 16 years of age, have a valid Missouri driver's license, and that the owners are required to carry insurance. So that is a brief summary of all of this. I know we only have a few minutes looking at the clock before the general meeting would start, but.
No, we have time. We have plenty of time to talk this through.
All right. So any questions about any of this? where we stand on it or opinions about a golf cart. We have some other concerns about it too. Quite frankly, the city of Webster Groves doesn't have the infrastructure built for these vehicles to be driven on our public roadways. And they're also included in the state statute is some regulations that does not allow for these vehicles to be driven on state highways. Anything that has a speed limit over 45 miles an hour, I believe it is. Yes, 45 miles per hour. And quite frankly, we don't have, our streets are not designed for this. If you look at communities where these have been designed, particularly they started out in the Florida, Arizona area in gated communities, designed for those residents to be able to move around those communities. They built in very large, wide sidewalks and that place for these vehicles to drive and be driven to where they're not in a public roadway. Trying to think of anything else. I apologize. I've got about 19 pieces of paper spread out in front of me. So any questions on any of this?
I do
I'm
have
sure
one.
there are questions and comments.
There
Yes,
is.
Laura.
Yeah, I do.
I'm curious of your list of items.
Yes.
How much of that actually comes on a golf cart?
They don't.
And so I guess one of my questions then is if we were to do this, are we doing it in a way that no one can really find a golf cart that works under our new scheme?
I don't have an answer for you on that, Laura, because I don't know.
And I should say, I'm actually not particularly in favor of this. It just, I don't want us to say we allow something and then have the requirements be so stringent that you can't actually do it anyway.
But let me help you out because I got kind of caught up in reading all this stuff. And there are these things called LSVs, and they do produce some of them that have all those gizmos on it, the seat belts and the speedometer and all that sort of stuff. So there's a difference. I mean, you got this inexpensive golf cart that doesn't have anything on it, or you can buy a more expensive, sort of like a golf cart called an LSV, whatever that is. And it has a lot of that stuff on it.
You're correct, Mayor. And part of it, Laura, to let this know, the Missouri statute that I quoted earlier, it also has a section in there that says golf carts operated on city streets shall be equipped with adequate brakes and shall meet any other safety requirements imposed by the governing body. And so that's where it would come down. So even the state statute says that we can impose anything we want on them. But what the mayor is talking about on LSVs, these are also the requirements by the National Highway Traffic Safety Commission. And I'm pretty sure the chief sent this out as well, but all the things we talked about are on that list. And that's what designates an LSV versus a golf cart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the residents who are requesting this were defining golf carts as what they want to legalize. And we have issues with golf carts. They're just not designed to be driven on public roadways.
Can I chime in for just a moment? There's also, to me, the most significant part of this is because they're not motor vehicles, no insurance is going to cover them unless you buy specific insurance for your golf cart. Okay, so your homeowners isn't going to cover it and your car insurance isn't going to cover it. It is not recognized as a vehicle under your automobile insurance. If there's an accident, and let's say, and who's going to drive it, by the way? Do you have to be 16 to drive one? It doesn't require a driver's license because it's not a motor vehicle under the Missouri statute. So if I have 14-year-olds and they're playing and again, they're just not paying attention and somebody gets hurt, that somebody's going to get hurt and there's no compensation for them. There's no way to pay their medical bills other than their own responsibility for that sort of thing. And going to your question, Laura, let me put it a little differently. All of those things on there are all things that are dedicated or on vehicles for safety purposes. So the purpose, of course, and the reason you have those is to make sure that the vehicle is safe. And it's not that we're trying to necessarily price it out of the opportunity for availability. What we are trying to do is make sure if you're using it on the public streets that it is safe. Now, having said all this, I have one. I don't have one here in St. Louis. I have one at a family place that we have in a rural area in Illinois, and they don't allow them there either. So again, and it's a little different game, but our sidewalks aren't big enough to accommodate it. If you did it, you'd have to put a curfew on it because they don't have lights. You obviously can't have them driving around once it's dark. There's just 1,000 things you would have to do to make this work. And again, I just don't think you can truly get there and still make it cost effective to the homeowners. But again, it's a safety issue as I see it, folk. And I'm not a big advocate of regulating everything to death, but this is safety.
Safety, Neil, for the person driving the vehicle or the everyone else?
All the above.
All the
I don't
above.
think I think it's everybody. Now, again, if you're driving the vehicle, you've made a choice, and I get that. And I'm not trying to legislate for you, but it's everybody else or a passenger that might get in. Again, I think that has to be considered. That's the reason we have all these rules. And all the things that we've said, the national highway safety requirements are pretty stringent. But again, they're there because they're safety requirements. So they shouldn't be simply disregarded. And again, I know you're not doing that, but again, that it's important to consider all aspects on that. So.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? My understanding is that part of the concern right now is just the ambiguity that maybe the golf carts aren't named in the one ordinance that exists. Would that be helpful if we choose not to kind of regulate them in a new way, but just add them to the list of motorized play vehicles, or I think that's what they're called?
Yeah, I got to tell you, that ordinance is inartful at best. And it's an old ordinance. And again, it could be changed and clarified. Again, I actually, at the chief's request, I've responded to an email that was trying to argue that this is in fact not covered by the ordinance. It is, but the ordinance is awkward. It could be cleaned up.
Other questions, other comments from council? Pam, Emerson?
How those municipalities in this region that permit golf carts, how do they address these issues, or do they address these issues?
David, I couldn't find any that allowed it. And there are lots of places where no one, sort of like in Webster, we pull you over and say don't do it, but they're not allowing it. So for instance, De Pere, I know has had some issues where folk are driving them around. You see them on the streets in De Pere, but I don't think De Pere has an ordinance that allows it. So I'm not aware of any that say yes. And I did look when I saw this on the agenda. Captain Perks, are you aware of any?
Cottleville, I know, allows them, but they built the infrastructure. I'm not aware of the language in their ordinance or how it's written, but I do know that they built the infrastructure. Their sidewalks are over 6 feet wide, all sidewalks, to accommodate the width of a golf cart. And I do believe Eureka allows them as well, but I understand that I don't have their language either on their ordinance, but I can find that for you, David, and let you know that. But I understand from some of our officers who live in Eureka, it was originally designed for private communities like the Legends, and then it was expanded to allow for some other usage as well, but it's really restrictive following the NHTSA guidelines. But I'll find a copy of those ordinance. I'll get that information to you.
Well, and I think this is to Sarah's point, right? Because I think that we run the risk now that if we continue to turn a blind eye, regardless of whether we legalize them or leave it as is, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that we can't leave it as is. We either need to legalize them or make them illegal and make a decision going one way or the other. Because what these other municipalities are doing is just, it creates too much ambiguity. And I think that we've created too much ambiguity. And I'm not saying that I know the right result here, but I do think that we need to make a decision.
Well, I can get with Captain Perks, get that language, and I can show you what I would do to clean up our existing ordinance. And then we can compare that with what else is out there. And then you can take a look at it. And we could have that to you, I'm sure, by the first January meeting.
Are there any reported crashes or any reported incidences related to golf carts in the city of Webster Groves in the past couple of years?
In Webster, sorry.
In Webster, I don't have the answer for you on that, David. I didn't research that prior to tonight's meeting.
I know of some anecdotally.
There are probably some anecdotally, yes. I'll do some research on that and see if I can't find any. Now that the letter that was sent out, there's about 15,000 cases every year across the country involving golf cart incidences that involve injury. But
And David, the Southwest Reporter is full
And
of,
I'll add to the little 12-year-old who was driving it.
I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that 15,000 number is just so, it doesn't ring much to me because it's like, well, what's the percentage of people using golf carts? You know, it's like, okay, 15,000 doesn't seem that much, but is it 15,000 for every 30,000 people driving a golf cart? Then it's like, holy crap, you know, that's a lot.
Yeah, and the data doesn't break it down to where, I mean, how many of them were on actual golf courses where they tipped over on a hill or were they, on a public roadway or whatnot. It doesn't designate the crash data.
All right, so it sounds like we're going to work toward something that makes this a stronger illegality, correct? Is that what I'm hearing from everyone?
Well, I'm going to produce one that would clean up ours right now. And the second part will be what they're doing in other places, so you have a comparative point.
So
I
at the
might be in the
moment,
minority here, Mayor, but like, I don't know if I'm necessarily on board with making it legal. I'd like to see some other options for us to be able to legalize these. And if other municipalities have created ordinances that require certain safety mechanisms to be included. Now, if I'm the sole person, then, I'm overridden and I can live with that, obviously, but I am just throwing out my 2 cents there.
anybody else want to throw theirs out? I'm in some ways, David, these LSVs that have headlights and a restriction about driver's licenses and seat belts, to me, might be acceptable. But currently, to take a golf cart and let a 14-year-old kid twirl around in the middle of the street, which is what I've seen, on a golf cart is really dangerous. And I think that's what I would like to see us find illegal. And I'm hoping the police will be able to stop that sort of nonsense.
And did I misunderstand, or did you say that even if we do get it loaded with all of these safety features, that it's not something that would be covered under homeowners or auto insurance? So
That's
either
right.
way, you still can't get it insured.
Well, there are some insurance policies that you can buy, but it would have to be specific to the golf cart.
And my
So-
concern is the 14-year-olds that want to drive it to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where are they going to park? That's true.
And
We
they
have
will drive
entirely-
it to school. They will
That's a
drive it
school
to school.
district issue, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
let's get into the weeds
We have
here.
an entirely different parking question that we'd have to deal with.
Well, we have a traffic advisory commission that we can start using.
Then
All right.
what's
We're
going to
gonna get-
happen is that we're going to start having a lot of, maybe not a lot, but some of these vehicles on the streets. Now we have to decide, okay, it's too many. What can we do to curb it?
Mhm.
So, it's something I don't think we should venture off into.
All right, so Neil, you're going to come back. You're going to talk
Slippery
to
slope
Captain
argument.
Perks. You're going to come back with some language cleanup, and then we can go from there.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. In the meantime, can the police pull off a 14-year-old who is driving one of these vehicles down the middle of the street? Are they able to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
So
All
is
right.
this going to be a part of a work? Do you need another work session to discuss this again on the 5th?
Uh,
The reason I asked,
Yeah, just put it on and we'll continue with the discussion when Neil and Captain Perks do the, come back with some language.
okay, because on the 5th, we're going to be kind of packed with material.
Shouldn't take us more than 5 minutes, right? Yeah.
I would
Yes, ma'am.
call those famous last words, Mayor.
Yeah, I know. All right, or you can do it the one after that, the 12th will be fine too, Joanne. I think there's not a big rush on it. Let's do what we need to do. Priorities.
19th, I think.
Right, or the 19th.
The 19th, I'm sorry. All right, our last agenda item tonight is the discussion of the diversity, equity, and inclusion training update. And you received a memo from Laura and me. And Laura, if you want to talk about this at all, feel free.
Sure, I'll just do a little background. As you may recall, over the summer, I talked to Ray Clay, who is the recently retired Vice President for the United Way, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's been a good resource as we try to identify professionals to work with us. And so when we talked about trying to find someone for training, I went back to Ray and talked to her, as well as getting in contact with, trying to get in contact with Rebecca Bennett from the Empower Institute, with Crossroads, with Kira Banks, and I think there's one more that might be in your memo that I'm forgetting. But Ray came back to me and suggested that the mayor and I meet with Gloria Carter Hicks, who runs Hicks Carter Hicks, which is a firm located in St. Louis that has a lot of experience doing this diversity, equity, inclusion work with government. I think, Mayor, if I remember correctly, 60% or so of her clients are governments. They range in size, or governmental entities. They've worked with the city of Cincinnati. They're doing work with Great Rivers Greenway right now on implementing their DEI strategic plan. And so we met with her, and we were very fortunate that Ray participated as well in that meeting. And so we're bringing to you right now a recommendation that we begin to develop a scope of works with Hicks Carter Hicks. They can do everything we want them to do. This recommendation, though, we talked about training last time, this recommendation is broader, that they really come in and do some consulting with us, use our equity audit as a launching pad to come up with a structure, a process, and real goals that we can collectively set, and a plan to implement those goals over time. And as both Ray and Gloria said repeatedly, you have to be in this for the long run. And so we have to do this carefully and step by step. And Gloria seems to be capable of doing that with us. So that's my brief introduction. I won't go through the scope of work because you have that. Jerry, whatever else you want to add.
Yeah. I just want to say that in our discussion with them, I think Gloria it seems so competent to get us through this, that they talked about thinking about this in 3 steps, and you have those 3 steps on the scope of work. They were very complimentary of us with starting with the audit with Beloved Community, and thought this was a great idea, and that this was our first step, was to get through that audit. And depending on whether Beloved gives us an analysis or not, they could perform that for us, or Beloved could, and it's something that we would talk about in a more refined scope of work. But the second step, to me, is the one that is really the robust step. And that's a step where we sit down and talk about what our mission is for DEI, what our goals are, objectives, and the actions. And they talked about this is the place in which, once you know what you really want to accomplish, is when you begin to define what you want in training needs. And that training could come from them or a number of other places, what you need in terms of mentoring, whether you want to do a commission or a council, all of that sort of thing comes after you define your mission and your goals. And then the third step is that you put this into some sort of action piece where you create your timelines and areas of responsibility. All of that, I think, takes some really good professional help. And I think that Gloria Hicks, particularly because they have some government background, would really do an excellent job with this. So I think Laura and I both would like to see us ask them to refine that scope of work and put a put some costs to that. So we can answer any questions.
Yeah, and I was going to say in my follow-up, one more thing, Pam, quickly. In my follow-up telephone call with Ms. Hicks, it's very clear that we need to involve Marie when she arrives in helping plan the scope of work and the timeline and things like that. And so they're aware that there's an additional actor that's going to become part of this as well. Sorry to interrupt, Pam.
That's okay. So I'm looking through the scope of work and I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I'm being very basic here, but where does it say there's going to be training for council?
So one of the things, and my initial email contact with her was about training. And one of the things that and she had a colleague with her, which is why I say they, that they made very clear was until you have the equity audit, which then grounds you in the kind of training you should have for your organization, but more importantly, motivates everyone in the why. Why do we need to do this? We all have an abstract understanding of why we need to do this, but for our organization, we need that specific statement of what we need, and that will inform how the training proceeds.
I guess I understand that, but it's not even mentioned in the executing the plan. There's nothing about training.
It's in step 2.
I mean, there it says we're going to talk about training. It doesn't say we're going to have a training.
Oh, well, you define what kind of training you want in step 2. Once you know what your goals are and your mission is, then you need to figure out what kind of training. When we talked about training, the question was what kind of training? What do you want in terms of training?
Right. I just...
Pam, I pushed them on this because I went into the conversation thinking really training should come first. Well, I really did.
I'm not saying it needs to come in first, but I feel like it's buried under all this other.
Well, also keep in mind that this is just a summary of notes that they're Jerry's notes from the conversation. This is not a formal, this is not a formal proposal for this. We're asking to go back for a formal proposal
that does help.
That is more specific.
Yeah, I mean, I would like, okay, when we go back to them, to ask specifically at what point could we do training together.
Yes, Emerson?
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand. So their first task where they will assist us in creating and clarifying our goals for the very next step. So if we so desire, after that creating the goals, we can go get somebody else, but we do have our roadmap on where they think we ought to go.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is if you want somebody else to do training for you, somebody else to help you with some piece of it, yeah. But it is, I think you're right. It's setting that roadmap.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what we need. That's the first step that we need.
I mean, it'll be good to have a third party do the roadmap because we have talked about.
Oh, absolutely. We need somebody else to do it. No, we can't do it. No.
Right.
Well, and I will say, I do think that'll turn out to be the first step, given what we will get back from Beloved Community as I understand it. But if we don't get back from Beloved Community an audit explanation and an explanation of the data that we want or need, they'll take the data that we got from Beloved and work with that for us as well to get us something that really helps us put together that roadmap.
Well, and I was just I really appreciate the work that Laura and the mayor have done on this. This is really helpful, and I think this is definitely the direction that we would go in. I was just, you might have answered this, I don't know, but cost-wise, what's the cost burden to the city?
We don't know yet. Right.
But there will be one. There will be one.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is.
And
I'm not opposed to spending money on something like this. Like, hey, I was advocating for the hiring of a whole new employee. So I just was wondering if there was any ballpark figure.
And this is not a one-time we're done and we're out. This is something that will be continuously as a budget item in our budget.
Right.
Joanne, didn't the company we're using to do the audit, didn't they have 2 different levels?
Yes, there's actually, so the first part is the equity audit, and that's $4,500. And then the next piece is the equity lens, which they would get much more, it would be a much bigger deep dive situation. But we hadn't signed off and said that we want to do that yet because we want to make sure that the equity audit really is valuable. And as Laura and Jerry said, if it ends up being a situation where it's not as useful as we'd like, they produce the information, but they can't communicate with us as well as we'd like, then we can move that to the other group that they mentioned. I think it was Carter Hicks. I'm sorry, Hicks
Carter Hicks is the
Hicks.
firm. Gloria Carter Hicks is the CEO, and we met with her and one of her associates. And I do want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that I don't think Beloved Community is going to give us a good work product. I don't want to, I'm just saying that Gloria Carter Hicks was pretty clear that she could take whatever comes from them and really use it for our purposes.
Right. And I was just saying that we have other options out there in case this doesn't work out.
I guess my question is that, you know, having that extra lens that Beloved Community is going to give, is that, do we need that for Gloria Hicks to do a better job at it, or just that surface audit, will that suffice as well?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, but I believe that they would be very happy to take the audit results and go from there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. There, Aaron von Groningen, whatever his last name is a really excellent research analyst, and so he's really eager to do that too. So, yeah.
So, I know you mentioned that they were doing something for GRG. What experience do they have with dealing with like municipalities of our size? Because I do think that we are going down a path that is rather unique, and to have someone with experience dealing with a municipality and how we can do DEI would be helpful.
You know, I don't have that in front of me.
I remember Kirkwood. They did some work with Kirkwood, and they mentioned a couple of cities, but like Laura, I didn't write those down.
But we do, your memo does have their website address on it. And I'm sure that they, because I'm pretty sure they had an extensive list of clients on that website.
And we will perform due diligence on their proposal as well.
Yeah. All right.
Can I give a quick update just on the city side?
Please, Joanne.
So we will have our first meeting with Beloved Community tomorrow. So they will get us started on our portion. But the other exciting piece is that we have a separate group, which Neil is participating in. So we're going to do a municipal court group, because I thought that would be totally valuable, as did Neil, so that we could really embrace and get into the detail with that. So we'll have Neil and Judge Whitney and Jen Deschamps, who's our prosecuting attorney, and our 2 court clerks. And so they will also do their piece. And I think this is so useful because, especially if you recall a few years ago when St. Louis County was getting the rap for being, well, not always doing the best practices and such. And I think this will display whether or not we are and what we need to do to improve.
Great.
And I spoke to Jim Whitney today and Jen Deschamps, and they were all about it. And so Judge Whitney is going to be talking to his clerks, making sure they know about it, and we'll schedule a time quickly.
Great. It's really good. And we have a new clerk. Our longtime Diane is retiring on Friday, and we have hired a clerk from Rock Hill. So it's good. Anything else?
I just want to thank you and Laura for doing that work. That was really good.
I really think these folks know what they're doing, which is good. All right. Are there any other questions or thoughts? Because we have about 13 or 14 minutes before we start our regular session. And if we have nothing else, we can take a good break now that some of you may appreciate. Yes? Unless there's some other update to consider. If not, then we'll take a quick break, or not so quick break. And we'll be back at 7:30 promptly and go from there. So thank you. And thanks, Captain Perks, for joining us tonight. We appreciate
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
you. So, all right, we'll take a break. Okay, it's 7:30 and we can move on. And I'm going to call this city council meeting to order. And I don't know, Katie, do we have remarks of visitors tonight?
Yes, Mayor, we have two.
Okay. We know what the routine is for remarks of visitors. If you've submitted them early, they will be read during that time. Otherwise, if you're here and want to speak, you can hit the raise your hand piece under next to your name as an attendee. So let's begin with the roll call.
Mayor Welsh,
Here.
Councilmember Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Karen, are you here? No.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
All right. Well, let's begin with the remarks of visitors. Katie or Jen reading those?
Yes, Jen will be right with you.
Howdy. Okay, remarks of visitors. Our first one is from Daniel Brazzini, and it was received on December 8th. 9 reasons not to have an internet sales tax. The city of Webster Groves continues to spend as before with twice-a-year pay increases for public employees and employing a second PR firm to promote the SG Collaborative, which also includes plans for more low-rent apartments near historic Webster. There's a global pandemic, so change your spending ways accordingly. Number 2, Missouri already has the 14th highest sales tax in the nation. Missouri state sales tax starts at 4.225%, and Webster Groves nearly doubles it to 9.24%. This creates a compelling financial incentive for residents to buy from giant online retailers from the 27 states without an internet sales tax and from retail stores in Clayton at 8.24%, University City at 7.8%, Wildwood at 5.225%, and other low tax options. Number 3, Webster Groves' high sales tax rate promotes retail businesses to locate elsewhere in low sales tax areas. Webster Groves' commercial real estate is only attractive to banks, offices, partially filled retirement homes, and low rent apartments because high sales taxes discourage retail. 4, taxes discourage commerce. Any new tax will increase the price of goods and services, resulting in fewer sales and less sales taxes collected. 5, with apparently only one tool in the city of Webster Groves toolbox, more taxation is again the proposed salvation for the city's budget. I simply ask for whose benefit? It certainly isn't for the benefit of struggling businesses and the city residents who must pay them or choose to buy from out of state. 6, the internet tax would be administered by a non-governmental agency called the Streamlined Sales Tax, SST. The SST is not answerable to government representatives or to the people. This begs the question, why would you vote for taxation without representation? 7, Missouri businesses need sales to survive, not another debt increasing, inflation promoting, and taxpayer-funded CARES Act or PPP payment protection plan. 8, instead of a never-ending harmful series of short-lived business bailouts, Missouri should simply eliminate the online sales tax Missouri residents currently pay on in-state internet sales. This must end so that Missouri residents have the same incentive to buy in Missouri as out-of-state residents have. Not taxing out-of-state residents gives Missouri businesses a competitive advantage and is a business-saving initiative Missouri should not carelessly tax away. Number 9, 28% of Webster's budget comes from sales tax collections. No businesses mean no sales, and that means no sales tax collected. Sales tax collections have dropped because of shutdowns and restaurants limited to 25% capacity and takeout only. We need to buy local to save our businesses, which eliminating online sales taxation is the best option available. Not spending or printing money we don't have is also equally wise, or have we forgotten what a penny saved is a penny earned means? And then
I think it's worth responding to there for a minute, just because of some of one, we might have a high sales tax here in the state of Missouri, but our income tax is what, like, I think like 11th lowest in the nation. And also, let's not forget the competitive edge that we were talking about that creates when everyone else around us does a use tax, yet we are not on our small businesses are at a disadvantage, and it's cheaper to go online and purchase compared to go to your shop here in Webster Groves.
Thank you, David.
On our second one is from Dave Buck, and that was received on the 15th, so today. To our mayor, city council, city staff, and the other community leaders copied. I believe the success of our city in 2021 lies in achieving 3 words: diversity, compromise, and trust. First, I believe that the sin of racism in America is one piece of a much bigger puzzle and problem. Throughout our nation's history, we have consistently fought against diversity, as anyone who is different from the dominant, Protestant, and powerful white man model is discriminated against and oppressed, including Native Americans, Blacks, Hispanics, women, the elderly, Jews, Muslims, immigrants, LGBTQ community, the poor and homeless, and the list goes on and on. Deceased Black socialist Audre Lorde said, "It is not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate our differences." To me, the goal of eliminating 244 years of racism will never happen. The achievable and realistic goal is to celebrate all of our country's vast diversity and to peacefully coexist. Second, compromise is not a dirty word, but a proven strategy to make peace. A compromise is an agreement of mutual consent that is a settlement of differences where both sides make meaningful and equitable concessions. It requires both parties to work together to find common ground. Here's just one major opportunity. If SG Collaborative and the City Council do not reach a positive and constructive compromise on the redevelopment project, given community objections, it is dead on arrival. Just ask the uncompromising Bruce Mills how well that worked out for the Mills project. Third, communities move forward at the speed of trust. No trust, no progress. Trust is the essential foundation of any human relationship. It is not granted or given, but it must be earned, built, and continually nurtured. For example, finding new and creative ways to build trust that fosters strong human relationships between our police and community is the #1 way residents say will improve policing in our city. In closing, there is a 4th word: peace. To me, your responsibility as council members also includes being our peacemakers. It's not easy. In fact, President John Kennedy said that we choose to embrace certain challenges, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Making and keeping the peace in our city is like a 40-foot dive into a tub of water, but I think you can do it. I believe in you. Please take the leap for all of us in 2021. Peace, Dave.
Thank you. Jen, are there any hands raised?
Oh, I believe there actually is one. That's Dan Brzezini.
But he's already submitted a.
He submitted his, thank you. Is that the only one?
Yes, that's the only one.
Okay, and we have his submission already. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to new business, of which there is none, and we have the consent agenda. Would someone like to call for the approval of the consent agenda? One of you? Unmute.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the
David, thank
consent
you.
agenda.
I can't hear you though.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Arnold?
She just dropped off.
We lost her.
Oh,
Hello.
okay, well, I'll circle back around. Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
So I got kicked out. May I ask what I'm voting on, please?
Oh, yes.
The consent agenda.
Oh, yes, I will happily vote for that.
Yes, Laura.
I think I was plugged up. I said yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay,
Got ya.
yes from
So,
Karen.
That
got it.
distinguishes you from so many other legislators, Laura.
Okay, so the consent agenda has been approved and we have no appointments to boards and commissions, but we do have an executive closed session. And so Ms. Arnold, can you do your work here? Unmute.
And what is the nature that I'm asking for here?
I believe this is under 1, which is attorney-client privilege.
Privilege, okay.
And
Three.
personnel.
And number
And
3,
personnel?
personnel.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session regarding #1, attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 1, close paren. And #3, personnel, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 3, close paren.
Second.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
All right. So with that, we will, you will need to go back and find the next clue to get into the next Zoom.
It was resent today, so you should be good.
You should be good.
Look for the clue.
We'll look for the clue. All right. We'll see you all in a little bit.
See you soon.